First, I need you blokes to help me get myself out of the shit. So I'm going to look straight down the barrel and just say, all comments that I make today are my own. I'm not representing Dick Johnson Racing. I'm not representing the Shell V-Power Racing team. I'm not representing Supercars. I'm not representing Motorsport Australia. Just me. So fuck it, boys. Let's go.
I will cheers to that.
Fantastic.
You're now an official hunter.
Oh no! He's in the fence! The boat's in the fence! They're all in the fence! Oh, unbelievable!
There we go. One
Cheers,
for you,
buddy.
Ryan. We've been. I can't. I'm so stoked that you actually agreed to having a beer with us on the podcast.
I'm excited.
Sound check.
After you. Cheers.
Cheers. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Great to be here.
Cheers. Well, we're back for episode 25, Apex Hunters United. It's a big one tonight. Today we've got a very special guest in here with Dr. Ryan Story. But before we roll into the intro for the great man, I just want to give a massive shout out to our partners. I had a very special night last night at the T8 Mates Night where someone actually came up to me and said that they'd used the AHU 15% off discount at East Coast Car Rentals. So that's very nice to see that is being used, and we've got listeners that are getting the benefit from partners. That was always the idea, is like if we can get someone to support us that also equally supports our listeners, that's fantastic. So if you are going away for Christmas, AHU 15, get yourself a hire car with a 15% discount through East Coast Car Rentals. Trico Wiper Blades, Trico Products AU is a massive supporter of our pod as well. So if you can support them, that would be great. And then Lancaster Motor Group, got the T on today. Big supporters of the pod. And we've flown up here to Brisbane, hired a studio that we can use while we're on the road so we can do these away interviews. And obviously without our partners, we can't afford to do those things. So thank you to those partners. But very excited today. So I might let you do this little intro here of our guest. Barbara,
Okay.
you take your sip. Who have we got in store for today for the listeners?
Dr. Ryan Story AM.
Yes.
Is that the right pronunciation
There's as many wanky letters at the start as there are at the end.
there? I love it.
I'm nervous this one. I mean, when you got all those letters in it, I feel like we're not really there yet to be doing these interviews with these people, but
No.
very stoked to have him on.
Do you know how many people? So your last pod, you flagged that I was going to be a guest. I've had so many text messages.
Really?
Yeah.
You know why I flagged it? I felt like once I put it out, you can't say no.
That's we're locking you in.
Yeah, I was like, you'd agreed to it, and I thought, that's it. If I say this, surely he can't pull the pin on this, because I have asked team owners to come on, and most of them, yeah, that'd be great. And then I feel like they're afraid because, I mean, we do love the sport, but for whatever reason, we're not getting the love back. And I think some people are afraid of coming on. It's probably not for whatever reason. It might be obvious some, but I feel like some are a little bit afraid. But hopefully, RD came on and got some great feedback.
Yeah,
Peter Addison was another one that is a divisive character, but the feedback on him was great because you're not always going to agree with everything everyone says. But hopefully by you coming on today, everyone sees that, it's actually good chat. And after a couple of hours, everyone makes their own mind up on people. That's what it's about. But it was an interview, wasn't it, that for Elliot and I, that when we've got to get Ryan on the show.
That's when I knew we had you locked in, mate. When you I think it was after your Gold Coast interview and you came out of your shell and you dropped a few, this is not what we're here for. And I think there was a little bit of swearing.
Yes, there
I
was.
rated it instantly. So did Scotty.
If you haven't seen it, I'll put it in the edit because it was brilliant.
Honestly, I couldn't care less or give a shit. If you're not winning or up the front, it doesn't matter where you finish. I mean, if come back to me when we're fighting over sheep stations, but fighting over P5 at the team's championship, whoop do.
It was like the most raw, authentic summary of where you were at the time, where you said, we're not here to come fifth. Like,
No.
it's not what we're here for. We're not here to fuck around. And that's when I think it started to become really public. Like, the Tom Moore thing was
Well, you blokes broke that with Giz.
Well,
with
bloody
SVG.
Shane did actually. Don't
Jeez.
blame us. And the funny thing about that, Ron, Tom and I were driving up to Bathurst for the international event, and the pod was getting released that day, and we didn't listen to it. The truck was chatting away, and then I go to Scotty that night. I go, "Hey, did you clear this with Tom? Like, is it like I just heard that Shane dropped
Yeah.
it? I couldn't remember what was said because we had a couple of sherbets." And then you go, "Yeah, no, it's all good, all good." And Tom's like, "No, he didn't."
Yeah. So I might not have. I thought that's a good bombshell. And I actually text Tom and said, hey, just a heads up, this is in the pod. And he goes, oh, okay, cool. Where can I see it before? And I said, oh, it's on YouTube. It's been up there for a day.
It's already done.
So, but I mean, yeah, I felt like there was one round left. Really, what's Cerebus going to do? They need the guy as a gun.
He was packing boxes already,
And
mate. It
and
was
we were
done.
so excited for him anyway. Like, I think, obviously I'm competing against you as well, but I'm still excited for a mate to be getting an opportunity at a proper team that's just like, motivated when we heard your interview where you're saying you're not here to come fifth. Like, it's very clear with what you're doing next year. You guys are making some big decisions to get back to where you want to be.
And that's when I knew we had you, mate, because then the next day, I think on Facebook, you said I was inspired by Apex Hunters and you tagged us in it.
Yeah.
When you got all the love back from the fans. So I was like,
I don't think I'd
this
ever
is
heard you
good.
drop an F-bomb in an interview. What made you feel like you could be so authentic in that supercar recap?
So it was Chad Nailon, and he was just there with a mic. So when someone just comes up to you and they've just got a mic connected to a Zoom or whatever, and they just throw it in front of you, you don't really think. And we just had a really shit race. Yeah. So it was just the right place, right time. But I got a call from someone at Supercars who said that the clip of me doing that, they put some graphics behind it. I think it was Anton getting turned around. They said it was one of their most viewed clips of the year.
We've got to encourage it more. I think that's what you need, though, isn't it?
It's not bad.
It is. It's funny, though, because I'm curious. I feel like drivers are starting to be a little bit more outspoken. I hope we're starting to show that if you are just yourself, people are receptive to it. Because, like, a lot of people, I was talking to someone last night at the T8 Mate Night. It might have been Will. Actually, I think it was Lounsey. And I was saying that fans make up their idea of what they think of someone based on what they're told by the media, really. Because we don't really have many podcasts out there. And the questions I feel like journos ask, you don't get to know someone. But then on our pod, it's like you chat to someone for an hour and a half and they go, oh, I didn't think that guy was a dick. Do you know how many times I thought you were a dickhead until recently. And I was like, well,
still a few
we clearly haven't done enough episodes yet for them to really get to know me. But there's so many people, they're like, oh, I didn't think much of him. But I'm like, why not? Like, what made you make that decision that you didn't like someone?
But you think about the halcyon days of our sport when blokes were wearing helmets like this. It was all about personality.
Yeah.
But we've become so corporate and indoctrinated by fear of the person paying for the sticker on the side of the car. They might get a bit upset if you show what you're all about. It discourages the punters. You have to engage the punters. You have to show a bit of personality. So I copped a question. I think it might have been at Adelaide. I think it might have been Chad on that same bloody podcast asking me, "Oh, are you going to change Brody Kostecki?" No, no. Why? We want to have fun. We want to go racing. We want to compete. We want to win. Yeah. But here's a bloke who's got a strong connection with the fans. He's just himself. Why would you want to change that?
Yeah, definitely. I do want to, you just touched the helmet. And I asked you, I was like, can we bring, because we're away, we're on the road, we don't have any props or anything. And I like set design and playing around with what's in the background and everything. And I did ask, I was like, if you got something to bring in, you said you're going to bring the 99 helmet. And so I decided to bring mine in because I did the ride day just a couple of days ago. So I got it here with me in Queensland and just putting them in front of like next to each other.
It's wild.
I cannot believe that's only 99. And I picked it up. The thing is like flimsy as we're talking about drivers getting concussion now. And I'm like, okay, like you picked that up and I'm like, I wouldn't want to trip over with that thing on, but no. Yeah, unbelievable. And such an iconic design. Like my dad watched Dick race with that helmet on and like, that's what I remember of supercars.
So I've got a bit of it. So there's two things I need to do. First, I need you blokes to help me get myself out of the shit. So I'm going to look straight down the barrel and just say all comments that I make today are my own. I'm not representing Dick Johnson Racing. I'm not representing the Shell V-Power Racing Team. I'm not representing Supercars. I'm not representing Motorsport Australia. I'm just me. So fuck it, boys. Let's go.
Oh, cheers to
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to AHU. You're now an official hunter.
So now we'd like to introduce you as the co-owner and team principal of Dick Johnson Racing. No, I'm kidding. No, that's awesome. That's what it's about. But firstly, when I told Will on the weekend that we got you coming on, he was like, oh, that's awesome. One thing I'd love to know is how the fuck did he make the money to buy into a race team?
Oh, shit.
And that's something we know that buying a race team.
You know.
I do, but the best thing about the pod is I get to ask the question. But yeah, I've learned this year, I feel like the best thing for the podcast is there's things also that I should know that I don't, and it gives me the ability to ask the dumb questions because I go, oh yeah, no, it's everyone else back home that needs to know. But I do know, and you did actually supported me with Formula Digital back in the day. I still got it on one of my race helmets and
gave you a couple of watches too.
I was just about to say.
I love that watch story.
I was just about to say the Sandown watch story.
You should have worn it.
It's not uncommon for us to get sidetracked here. We're only one drink in. But the watch story, you gave it to me. Remember Sandown? I finished 5th and I passed Shane. It turned out he had a mechanical failure. He said on our pod what it was that day. But you said, there's no way we qualified. Oh, right, but Walshy crashed. That's right. He got turned at turn 1. Not his fault. Sorry, Walsh. And you're like, there's no way you're getting top 5 today. And I'm like, fuck, I reckon we could do it. And you're like, all right, that's a good bet now. We'll put a watch on that.
Well, we were waiting. We were trying to line up the right race to have a bet on because you're a cheeky bastard. And every driver I've ever had is a cheeky bastard. They always want to watch out of me because I love the bloody things. I mean, this is the replacement I had to buy after I gave you my sub.
Yeah. It's a 1990. Thank you. The year I was born.
It is
You looked
a
after me
birth
that.
year. Yeah.
Beautiful watch.
That's why it had to be yours. But we were waiting for the right moment. And we had colluded and you had a plan that you would wait for the right moment to challenge me on it.
Yeah.
To basically try and win the
It
damn
actually
thing.
needs a service. I found out how much they cost. So maybe we could do another
Was that
bet.
part of the deal?
No,
No, maybe we
service
could do
not
another
included.
bet though. He pays for the service if I win or something.
Oh, shit. well, look, we can come to an arrangement. Let me get into number 3 and I'm sure we can come to an agreement.
But yeah, how did you, for those that don't know, and me included, get into motorsport? Mate?
So look, I'll give you the real quick summary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a very busy month for me because of the US election. So my background is in politics and business. So I started an IT company when I was 12, which I was a weird kid, and plenty of people would argue not much has changed. But started a business selling computers as a kid, living in the middle of nowhere, fellow South Australian
Australia,
over
though?
here.
Oh, right.
Selling computers to my teachers, selling them in a regional community where there was really not any option. So I had a bit of a monopoly on the place. Grew a reasonable stack of change out of that. Loved politics, got involved in politics as a kid, was a campaign manager when I was in high school, won a fair few elections. I think I've done 25 state and federal elections here in Australia. I've done elections in New Zealand, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and quite a few in the States.
Jeez.
But the States is where it's been most lucrative for me.
Podcasting played a big contributing factor by the sounds of it in this year's, I'm sure maybe not in the outright election results, but it was actually something they said that they think the campaign, like one thing that contributed was actually the podcasting and being able to show, because then, you know, like we said, you make your own mind up after a couple of hours of listening to someone, because no matter how well prepared you are, I feel like the truth comes out. Like you end up showing who you are after a couple of hours of someone just having a conversation.
But
and it seemed like it made a big...
Look at Joe Rogan, right?
Yeah.
People get on that podcast for 3 hours and you're exactly right. You know who they are. And to his credit, he had Trump on and that was enthralling viewing as it always is. But he wanted Kamala Harris on.
Yeah, she wouldn't.
Yeah,
do it.
she would.
And they did, and it's interesting, the leadership of her campaign did Pod Save America, I think 24 hours ago. And they were asked, why did you not do this? And so they did, I think she did the Call Her Daddy podcast.
Yeah.
But it was all bullshit because they spent $100,000 getting a hotel room and fitting a set out in the hotel room to look like their normal set. So it was all a load of bollocks. But Rogan said, look, I want her on. I just want to know who she is as a person, but we don't edit and she has to come here.
Yeah.
So they claimed on this podcast yesterday or the day before that they were available to do it, but only on the day where Trump was recording his. But one of the interesting things about American politics compared to Australia is that voting is voluntary. So you have to engage the people and get them to vote. But if you think they're not going to vote for you, you kind of want them to stay home on election day.
Yeah.
So it's all about basically reaching the audience. And with podcasts, it's about reaching young blokes.
Yeah.
Like Rogan's the most popular podcast in the world. And
actually, it's very close between him and Apex Hunters United.
Yeah,
It's
we're
actually- it's a
we're
tight
coming
fight.
for you, Joe.
It's a big fight between us, actually. But
close sec. Well, listen, the ratings for this one will be down. Ratings will be down.
That was good.
That's pretty good.
That was real good.
Look, I'll get a couple more of these.
I can tell that you are very, very passionate about that. And that's obviously, so that is where you cut your teeth and made your money. But,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you put together the funds. How do you then come across, I remember you telling me you were a big fan of Dick Johnson and the race team and everything, but how do you then, meet the guy, build a relationship and buy into a race team, into his team and help him? Because I know it was a pretty tough period when you did join in 2013. DJR was going through a pretty rough patch with financially anyway.
So before I go into that, there was an interview I did with, remember that Inside Supercars show they did on Fox back in the day?
Yep.
I did an interview with Crompton in 2015 and Jeff Swartout was working for us at the time. You remember Jeff?
Yeah, I remember Jeff, yeah.
And basically Crompton asked me effectively the same question. And I turned around and said, I've been a big fan of Dick's for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh.
And didn't think anything of it. And the boys clipped it. It was everyone's ringtone for months.
If I said that, Elliot would definitely hold me accountable.
God. I nearly said it before.
I've heard
I was
Dick say
just
it
telling
to
myself in
fans
my head.
before where, my daughter loves Dick, And even Dick doesn't let him get away with it.
So it's just got to be DJ. I've been a big fan of DJs for a long time.
Yeah.
But that's a tip for young players.
Right.
But massive fan of DJs for a long time.
Yeah.
I first met him when I think I was in primary school, maybe grade 6 or something, and had a photo with him at Malala. And it was like all my Christmases had come at once. It's a funny story. So I went to a regional high school where I lived in a place called Yorktown, and the art teacher had taught my mum, and he was a close family friend and a ripper bloke. And I remember after year 8, he said to my parents, who he got on great with, used to go surfing with my dad, all that sort of stuff. He said, "I'm a bit worried about Ryan. I think he's obsessed. He keeps talking about Dicks and Johnsons and all this. And I don't know what's wrong with him." And my parents thought it was the funniest thing ever. But I was massively into DJR and to supercars as a kid.
Right.
And I started sponsoring DJR in 2011. And I actually wrote a business plan for DJs after they effectively won the championship with Courtney in 2010 and went from the penthouse to the outhouse in 2011. They just had nothing. And basically they had Moff and Stevie J driving for them at the time, but I was so engrossed in my political journey at the time that I hadn't been following supercars as closely as I had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So they won the championship in 2010 and I just sort of knew about it from the periphery. I was a card carrying teammate, like a 888 mate, the same sort of membership program. So I was a member of the fan club effectively and just couldn't quite wrap my head around how it had all turned to shit. So I had more front than mire at the time. I was an arrogant shithead. And you copped a bit of that when I was your boss for a while.
To be honest, mate, I was probably pretty similar. I think when we crossed paths at the beginning, we had some big head-button moments.
We did.
I think he told
What's
me
the best?
he told me no one liked me at one point.
Oh, I
was
never
like,
said that.
probably.
Actually,
But
I did say that.
Biggest headbutt moment we had, I don't know. I don't know. We definitely butted heads. I mean, everyone though, I think the problem is with this sport, not the problem, it's actually what makes it great. We're all volatile, and if you're not, then you're probably in the wrong sport.
Well, if you don't have the passion for it, then what are you doing?
And it's always in the pursuit of performance, and I think sometimes people take it personally, which it should never be.
Yeah.
But I felt like we've never had to put water under the bridge or anything. It was always just like we had some big blues in the heat of the moment where you're just trying to get performance or you're trying to work out why it's not coming together. But then you leave the room and it's left in the room. I've never felt like I couldn't come down and say hello, or when I walk past your pit, like it's never felt like there was animosity there. It was just you had heated moments, and I'm very passionate, if you couldn't tell. There's a few things, honestly, we do prep for a pod, we'll chat about it, and I can see Elliot's face turn red, like, oh, fuck, no, don't bring that, don't. You know, and it's like, I just get passionate.
I'm the peacekeeper here, mate. We all know Scotty likes to upset everyone.
Hey, look, someone's got to be above.
But you got to be, don't you? Like, I think that's the thing, and you got to be. And I was early days, though. When I came in, you were under a lot of pressure. And then me equally, because 2013 was such a shit fight for a year for me. I was on fire 3 times one weekend, brake failures. Everyone thought I was useless. Like, it was a redemption for me. And I was stressed at the time because I'm thinking, fuck, I think with you guys I did a one-year deal or 2. And then the Penske thing happened. I'm out of a drive. So it was constantly
So actually, that's
the
thing. I can probably think of 5 things that I regret. And there's probably a dozen more.
Mm-hmm.
But you had a 2-year deal. You had 14 and 15.
Yeah, but it got cut on me.
And I know that who I am today with the experience I have now, we would have been a 2-car team in 2015. It would have been you and Marcus. Yeah. And that's one of my regrets, is that I didn't fight hard enough. I didn't have the experience. But when you were with us, we had 2 major issues. I was still wet behind the ears. You were driving for your career. And then separate to that, I was bankrolling the whole damn thing.
Yeah. Well, one thing I appreciate that knowing that now that you bankrolled the whole thing, you actually paid me my full-time salary as Coe still.
Yep.
But as a driver at that point, it's like that was great, but it was so stressful being like, well, fuck, now I'm co-driver. It's pretty hard to get back into full-time. It's just lucky that Ambrose, and it's funny because people think that like somehow I pushed Ambrose back out or something, but Ambrose, I remember I got a phone call from you. I was at the gym and it was in Portside in Hamilton. I'll never forget the phone call. It was just after the Melbourne Grand Prix. You rang me and said, you need to come in the office today. And I was like, oh my, what have I done? Like, fuck. And I just constantly seemed like I was in trouble all the time. And I'd just been beat up for 2013. Yeah, all right, I'll come in. And I came in and they're like, oh, just wait, Ryan's having a chat with Dick and Ryan. And then I got the call in and Ambrose stayed in the room. And he said, it's been and most people don't know this, and you can obviously now sitting here, I can say the story and it's definitely true because you're sitting opposite me. And he said, it's not going how it was. And there was a red flag raised at Newcastle the year before where he was off the pace and I was 5th or 6th. But I was out of a drive at that point. And he said, from that point, I was kind of like, fuck, this is going to be a steeper hill than I thought. And Ambrose was a big man to say, I think the best thing for the team right now is to put you back in full time. I'll be your co-driver. And then you steer the ship for the next however long until they get back on their feet or go to 2 cars. That was literally how it happened. And then Ambrose said, I'll leave the room now and you guys can work out your deal to go back full time. Walked out and I sat with you and Dick and you worked out how much to pay me to finish the year.
It's truly extraordinary.
Yeah.
You think about what other sports person in any sport, yet alone supercars or motorsport, would have the balls and know themselves well enough to go, you know what? I'm not the right guy for this job. I'm going to step back. I don't care what people say. I don't care what people think.
Yeah.
And I remember, so Roger called me to tell me about it. So Marcus had told Roger, I think the Tuesday after that Grand Prix weekend, said, I'm going to step out. And I remember exactly where I was. I was in the boardroom at DJR. I remember staring out the window thinking, oh, fuck, what do we do now? Because Ambrose was a major reason why Penske came in, to the point where Roger even said, if Marcus hadn't committed to us, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, right.
So I didn't know what the hell to do. But Roger said to me, he said, the only other driver I've ever seen do this is Rick Mears. So Rick Mears, Penske had expanded to a 3-car IndyCar team in the early 90s. They had Paul Tracy driving for them. And Mears, who is an absolute legend, just went, yeah, I don't have it anymore. I'm going to step back. But Ambrose, as you know, so there's 2 things that I remember vividly about, well, 3 things really, 2015. First was at Adelaide, you'd literally been kneed in the balls and told you didn't have a full-time drive. You were at Adelaide. You were in every debrief. You sat with Roger. You got to know him. You were incredibly professional.
There's one point you probably don't know. I did fall asleep next to Roger because I was really hungover.
Oh, jeez. I didn't know that.
He's giving you a pub up to go, mate, I was just blowing.
I'm just blowing your bags and that's what you tell me?
Oh, look, I had to find some fun in it though. It was still like, it was devastating. But I was like, I'm going to be there and I'm going to put pressure on. I remember actually trying to give Ambrose like driver coaching tips just so he felt even more under the pump. But yeah, I was there every day. But there's a shot of me, my mates, and when we getting the text going, did you just nod off next to Roger Penske?
Shit.
But you didn't know that one. But it's like RD. Found out some stuff that I can't get in trouble now. It's a long time ago. You can't tell me off anymore.
Statute of limitations is done.
It's done. But yes, you're right. That was a big thing for me, was to be there and put the pressure on.
But the other person who was phenomenal was Marcus. He went to every race after that.
Yeah.
So he literally surrenders his drive for his co-driver, who's now taken on the ride full time, and he's there doing everything he can to help. It was really impressive. The other thing that impressed me that year was your drive at Bathurst, because that was the catalyst for us expanding to a 2-car team.
Is that the Xbox car?
Yeah, that was. I tried to buy I'm trying to get the bonnet. It's in America. You guys bloody sold everything and sent it to America. So now I want to get the bonnet back, the Xbox one, because I think it'll look great in the set. No, it's real. It's in America. Anyway,
I think I've got an Xbox bonnet at the shop still.
Oh, let's do a deal. Let's feed him some more. I've only got a 6-pack. We need to try and do another bet. But it is, that for me, there's special moments where in your career you look back and they're like pivotal moments. And a big one for me, which, there's Jeff Morgan, who was a big contributor in my career. Simon Hardwidge is another one who's actually meshed up on my visor now, still support me today. Roland Dane. There's a few people that you just go, shit, without them it wouldn't have happened. And the Xbox car, even though it ended, I still see the photo of it sitting on that flatbed just written off. But I remember sitting in the hospital bed just devastated after the race, and I'd done a fair bit of damage to myself. So Tim came in and I just felt like that was my moment, because the car was so fast that year. The Xbox car is fantastic. And every time I got in, I remember battling Shane for pit priority all day, and we kept getting it back. And when the thing crashed, I was just like devastated. I felt like the opportunity to show what I could have done was gone, and I knew I was out of contract at the end of the year. Tim came in and he just I remember him hitting my leg going, mate, fuck, unbelievable day. Like, I'm going to call you tomorrow. Yeah. And it was like a glimmer of hope, like, oh, I wonder what that phone call's about. And I was in the car driving back the next day with a mate of mine, and he rang me and said, I had a chat with Ryan. You're going to come in tomorrow and we're going to do a photo shoot with you and Fabian, and we're going to 2 cars. What you do on the weekend is great. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one for me that stands out as, I don't think 2016 it would have been, 2015? Yeah, it would have happened without that day.
For
2016 you were on pole at Adelaide in the shell
colours.
Yes,
because
I've got a photo with you on the front of the grid.
Because I had shingles. I got the scars to prove it, so I wasn't at Adelaide. And I remember getting the call on the Friday saying, Scotty's on pole. And I went, fuck off. Don't bullshit me. Look, you're not going to get me to Adelaide. And they're like, no, Scotty's just got on pole. So I was driving to an ophthalmologist because I had shingles on my forehead and they were checking it wasn't in my eye. And I just said to the bloke, am I good? And he went, yep. I said, so what do I need to do here? He said, just cover everything up, take the antivirals for the shingles. You'll be in a fair bit of pain, but you'll be fine. And then I'm frantically getting a flight to get to Adelaide and got there that night.
I probably over-celebrated that pole position, but anyway, who gives a shit? I look like an idiot when I look back.
We didn't convert it into results, but the
that was a tough day. 14 seconds lost in the pit stop. I'll never forget that. I was like, J-Dub got me off the line, which I thought was fucking, that annoyed me anyway. I got pole position and got smoked into one. And then, but we were running second and I thought, we're on here, at least like I'm trying to catch J-Dub, but yeah, 14 seconds in the lane. Then the next day we double stacked, but they're teething problems. This is what people don't realize. You go from, we will get to it because I want to talk about as well. How did Penske join? Like Elliot and I have been talking about this a lot the last couple of days. Like, fuck, I'd love to know that story as well. But quickly, like DJR to Penske, there's teething problems teams go through. You wouldn't realize, like, everyone thinks immediately it's going to click, but they don't understand the processes, everything that have to be in place and procedures. And communication in the garage that day, you fully restructured where the engineers sit after that day so that they could see each other's faces when they make a decision and be able to actually communicate properly. Because we pitted both cars on Sunday and double stacked under green conditions. It was just a tough weekend started so great.
So you'd remember this too, because I'm haunted by it. But in that Sunday race, it was red flagged early and we hadn't done our minimum fuel time.
That was the wet race. Maybe it was Saturday.
It was a wet race Sunday.
That was the one that LBM won. Percat won because of the fuel stuff.
We crossed the line second and third.
But no, I think we had second and third. So everyone's thinking it's real. You know what it's like. Everyone in the garage, they don't understand the vicissitudes. Fuck, it's a big word for a couple of
that just went straight in my head, mate.
You didn't slur it yet, though, so that's a positive.
I'm getting there. Well, look, I'm a Cadbury. So
are you a two-pot screamer?
I am. It's a terrible.
Well, we might feed all three of those left here. See what happens.
Well, look, I'm built for comfort, not for speed. So I get a couple of these into me and I lose it. But we cross the line second and third and just going to everyone, calm down. It's not real. Right. It's not real. And we knew we were. We knew we were toast. But the same thing at 2015, Bathurst 2015, one of the things that still haunts me to this day is following you in an ambulance to go to Orange Base Hospital and going, fuck, this shit's real.
Yeah.
Like one of my drivers has got maybe a broken ribs, maybe a punctured lung. Who knows what's going on?
Yeah.
But this is serious. Like this is
serious.
Yeah,
we were out for a while. I was out for 3 minutes. I didn't. That crash was one of the biggest ones. I actually want to see if I can get some vision from Supercars and do like a reaction video to some of my shunts and explain what happens. Because like the Bathurst one when the steering failed, we did 3 ribs that were broken in the middle of my back, and then I collapsed my lung, and my feet got real swollen because I had hit between the pedals. They went in between the pedals, and I remember I was out. So I crashed, wasn't knocked out on impact, but suffocated. And I remember I put it back to neutral. And if you go back and watch the vision, you actually see on YouTube my hand drop off the gear lever. And I think even when I go back and watch that, I remember that moment and being winded, thinking, it's okay, don't panic. And then I woke up and it's like a movie where the noise is ringing in your ear and Dr. Carl was already in the car.
Yeah.
And after, like he didn't believe me that I had suffocated until he saw the vision of my hand go neutral and then drop off the gear lever. He said, your body's, it's amazing what it'll do. It'll shut down and go into like conservation mode. And I was tired. I stayed in overnight so they could I think they got to inflate it over a period of time or get the oxygen back in. You can't just
pump it up.
Yeah, it's like hyperventilating otherwise. Or something.
1 or 2 nights.
Just the one night. I got out the next day. But yeah, those crashes that could be it. Like it's a game we're playing that's pretty serious.
When you think about it, that's the highest load corner of any place we go. Huge load, and basically the power steering pump, the pressure just went through the roof. So we went to significant trouble after that to get a discontinued power steering pump that could handle pressure better than the one that we were running.
Yeah.
But I remember that the onboard footage, when you hit the wall, all the shit came off the seat. All the stuff for the in-car camera came off the seat. So we saw that and we knew it must have been a big one.
Yeah.
Because it triggered I think it triggered the ADR.
Yeah, it's like 50 something.
You came back on the radio and we thought, okay, he's all right. We knew it was a big hit. We didn't know I'd write the car off.
I don't think I did come on the radio.
I think you did. Because it was not, well, maybe you didn't, but I remember we got some sort of indication that you were okay.
Yeah.
And maybe it might have been, maybe they did cut to the onboard and we could see you moving or something like that. But there was some sort of an indicator that you were okay, and we didn't realise it was that serious. But do you remember Gold Coast, which was the following race?
Yeah.
You and I go into hospital for you to get a nerve block.
Every morning, yeah.
Because it was you and because Courtney had to have them at the same time because he had a...
Was that the helicopter thing? When the helicopter blew the sign into him?
From that stuff with the...
But do you know why I was so adamant to do those nerve blockers? So it was like a big deal. I had to go on the scanner every morning and I was lucky that where the ribs were broken, I was at no risk of them damaging a lung or anything like that. They were at the back, so they allowed me to race with them. But I did practice one and thought I'll just try it because it was pretty bad. I couldn't sleep with it, but I thought I could maybe do practice one. And the reason it was so important was I think it was Andre Heimgartner was floating around at the time. And I was afraid that if I didn't drive, even if I did a shit job, I was like, I can't give the seat up because if someone gets in, and the car was so fast at Bathurst, I thought the car's great. Like if I get out and someone does a good job in my seat, that could be it again. Like it's just, unfortunately you're in such a competitive environment. People don't realize it's like, that's your job. I've got no other qualifications at that point. If I lose my gig, I'm not sure what I do after that. So I was like, well, I'm going to race. Did practice one, did a couple laps. Car was a jet. We topped practice one on the first run, but I didn't finish the session because of the pain. Yeah, you took me to hospital after practice one, and Dr. Carl put me in the CT scan or whatever it's called, the big thing, and injected local anesthetic, nerve blocker, and steroids into my back. And he did that every morning at 5 a.m. So I had nothing from my armpits down. There was nothing I could feel. It was like the best thing ever. But Monday morning was like the worst hangover you could imagine because all the pain came back.
Or the adrenaline hit too.
But we had a pretty good weekend, but it was just one of those things you can't
I remember
give the seat up.
I remember you and I talking about it afterwards. But this is the thing that people don't understand about the psychology of a race driver. You do whatever it takes. I'm a bit of a smart ass. I make the joke that you got to remember about racing drivers. They missed a lot of schooling to go karting when they were 7.
Yep.
So you
certainly did.
You got to find the right audience for a line like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people won't understand the commitment from a professional athlete to do whatever it takes, even to the point of potentially compromising their body to be able to do it. But that was a massive wake up call for me because it was the first time anyone driving for me had to go to a hospital like that. So David Wall had a big prang, rode a car off in 2014 at Pookie. Wasn't the same. Yeah. He was okay. But after that, I always had this mentality after that if any of your drivers is in a big one, your responsibility as team owner and the bloke running the show is that your face has to be the first one that the driver sees at the medical centre. Yeah. Just so that they know it's okay. So they know it's okay. Like, because most people default when something like that happens to, okay, where's the threat? Where's the threat? Are the team going to blame me for this?
Well, particularly as a young driver, because Elliot, you've been through this where you're paying for your own way or you're trying to find partners and you don't really have enough budget. You have a crash. I remember once I didn't let my dad in the medical centre at Sandown. I actually was like, no, don't let him in because I'm going to be in that much fucking trouble. I crashed at Dandy Road in qualifying and shunted my Formula Ford. We actually didn't end up finishing the championship because we couldn't afford to fix it. But all he wanted to do was come and make sure I was all right. But I actually said to the medics, I'm like, no. They're like, your dad's out the side. You want to see him? And I was like, fuck no, I don't want to let him in yet.
Got tools in his hand?
give him 10 and then I'll see him.
But I think I learned that from you and from that experience because I remember telling my business partners in DJR, Brett and Sean Ralph, this at Bathurst this year because Will Davo had that 58G hit and it was the same deal. Look, again, built for comfort, not for speed.
Took you a while to get it.
You see me running and it's just like, good God, what's
light job.
Things are connected in weird places. So ran down to the medical centre and made sure he was the first person I saw. Now, Will's a veteran. He doesn't need his team boss to tell him that everything's okay, but it's a responsibility that I think you have to take very seriously.
I think it's a nice thing to do. Can we circle back to Penske and the story? How did Roger get involved? Because arguably probably the godfather of motorsport.
And you must have built DJR back to a point now where he's interested in the product.
Yeah,
as well. Like so that. How did you? I guess you wrote the business strategy in 2011? Was it 2011? Yeah, before you joined. But then obviously 13 is when you've joined.
Yes. What
did you do there to get it back on its feet, just briefly, and then?
So was it only 2 years, mate, from when you rolled into the business to then when you had got Roger on board? Yes,
but it was in the first year that we made contact. Well, they made contact.
Wow.
So effectively in 2013, there was a wealth transfer from me to DJR. but Steve Braybeck was around. Steve Braybeck, who was one of the co-owners of CrimSafe, wonderful human being, just a terrific bloke.
Yeah, it's nice to still mention Steve too, because when sometimes people pass away and years go by,
he's a special person.
You don't mention people sometimes, and he's one that does deserve. Steve Braybeck was...
But he was instrumental in DJR winning the 2010 championship, because come Homebush, Dick and Charlie weren't talking, and the team couldn't afford the flights to get to Homebush.
What was their beef?
Yeah, do you know what? Do you need another drink?
Their beef, I think
what was their beef?
Well,
oh, we're up. Actually, I'm due as well.
I'm not quite there yet.
That's
so
all right. We'll sit it here so you know where it is.
I appreciate that.
Sound check.
You blokes are better than me. I've got probably a quarter of this left to go, but I'll get through it. But
so what was their beef for you?
Their beef was... It was basically it basically came down to family. So Charlie wanted to have Will Davison join the team and take over from Stevie J.
Right.
So we'd have a 2-car team with Courtney and with Will Davo. Now, Will was at the peak of his powers at that point in time. I think what I didn't understand coming into it later was that at the time all of this was going on, DJ had been diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Right.
And was going through a radical prostatectomy, which is not an insignificant bit of surgery.
Yeah.
And there's recovery time when you go through something like that. You got to learn how to use your body again. It's a bit of a life-changing affair for anyone. So he was going through this pretty acrimonious divorce with his business partner and doing so to try and protect his son and going through this serious medical situation.
So he's trying to keep Stevie J in the seat and fighting for that while Charlie seeing the future of the team is in Will Davo and James Courtney.
And look, both of them are right. Both of them are wrong. Both of them are right. But when you're in business with someone, you got to work with them. And I think Charlie's a pretty fiery sort of a bloke. Obviously they had a good team at the time. They just won a championship in a customer car, which is pretty extraordinary to say the least. But I think you're absolutely right. He was focused on the future and not really, I don't think he really took into consideration where Dick was at and his loyalty to his son.
Which unfortunately you probably can't take that into consideration though. You know, I think that you've got to, it is hard to, you got to work with them, but at the same time, if you have a difference of opinion, maybe that's where you do go separate ways, which is what ultimately happened.
So here's the thing. So you think about it, only a year later, at the end of 2012, or just over a year later, I'm at DJ and Jilly's house at Alcatraz, Ephraim Island, and I'm sitting there with Stevie J going, look, the best thing to do is to shut this thing down because you've got 8 figures of debt. Like, do you have any idea how fucked you are? And Dick saying, I don't know how to do anything else. And the first thing I had to say to them was, we need to take on a pay driver and Steve's got to step out. So I think part of it is you need to understand the needs and aspirations of people. And in that situation, it was a matter of saying to the Johnson family, look, I'm prepared to back you all the way, but there's got to be some give with the take. And it's not an easy decision for anyone to make. And Steve was phenomenal about it. He understood exactly why it needed to happen, and he was fully supportive of it. Now, if he'd arched his back, because Dick and Jilly were they didn't want to go there. And I think if Steve hadn't supported it and understood what the rationale was behind it, DJR wouldn't be here today.
So it's the same conversation that could have happened though between Charlie and Dick
but
that Charlie didn't see that. He didn't put it that way or have that insight and knowledge that you did, I guess, from a business perspective to go, this is what we're going to do in the short term to build this thing back then.
Well, I think the big thing is you always got to trust the person in the room, right? So I don't know what discussions they had, but obviously they were pretty tight, Dick and Charlie, and they couldn't be any further. They couldn't be more diametrically opposed today. But where I suppose you do have to have some criticism of Charlie in that situation, because I think there isn't anyone. It's not a victimless crime how that all played out, but Charlie not taking into consideration where the Johnson family was at and managing them better.
Yeah,
it's one of the things about DJ. DJ will be the first to tell you, as a businessman, he's a hell of a fucking race driver.
Yeah,
he's incredibly trusting of people. So when I came into the scene, I told him everything, warts and all, and we just had an agreement that whether it would upset him.
You're not getting offended here.
Rip the Band-Aid off. Hey, DJ, this is the financial position of the company. These are the calls I need you to make today. This is what I need you to say.
Yeah.
But it was no secrets. It was a fully open kimono. And that's how we've somehow managed to make the bloody thing work. We're 12, 13, 14 years after the fact. But that was massive. But yeah, so that's how Charlie and DJ fell out. Then, so 2010, Steve Brayback was instrumental in those guys securing that championship. He was then bankrolling the team in 2011. He was taken advantage of in 2012 by the leadership of the team. And the same things happened to Dick. So when Dick was driving, when he hung up the helmet, Wayne Caddick was the CEO of DJR at the time. He'd moved to supercars. Wayne put in a new bloke to run the team, and that bloke was a bean counter.
Right.
DJR had $6 million in the bank. So you think about it, this is the year 2000. A race team having $6 million in the bank is insane.
Yeah.
And DJ, halfway through 2000, again, when Stephen's driving the car, DJ's the most competitive bloke on the planet. The only person more competitive than DJ is Jilly. So there's super competitive people. And he's going, why aren't we going faster when we got this money in the bank? What are we doing?
Yeah.
So he got frustrated with the bean counter, trusted another bloke who came in and then proceeded to fleece him and get him in the financial trouble that he was in up until we sorted everything out. So he's a super trusting person. He trusted me by default. I didn't want to be the same as some of the people who came before me. Mm. And even to this day, we still have that relationship. I tell him everything, warts and all, you know.
And what about Penske then? What was that first phone call like? Someone reached out to you?
So we then get to 2012, I'm sort of around the team, but not really. End of 2012, I said to DJ, we got to wrap it up, but we kept going. 2013, a bloke by the name of Don Hansen, who was the marketing manager for Western Star Trucks, handed Richard Swan a business card at the Gold Coast and said, Penske have just bought from Trans-Pacific their Western Star MAN truck distributorships. Roger wants to go racing. You're going to hear from him. Now, Rich gave me the card and relayed the story, and my bullshit detector was going off. Like it was off the scale. It was like it was bouncing hard off the limiter. I'm just
There's
like,
no way.
Give me a fucking streak. I mean, please. Roger Penske, piss off. Now, I knew that he'd bought the truck business from Trans-Pacific because Trans-Pacific is now Cleanaway. They're listed on the stock exchange. It was a big deal because RP had last been in business in Australia when he owned Detroit Diesel. So sold Detroit Diesel to Daimler. And for him to re-enter the market was a pretty big deal. So I had this business card, ignored it. A week later, Don Hansen calls me.
You imagine you might have regretted that.
I couldn't sit on that for a week. Sorry, Sam.
Well, I got the call and he said, Roger's going to call you. And my bullshit meter was still going off the charts. I just didn't believe it was real. I just thought it was all nonsense. Then I've had some health issues. At the end of 2013, I went in for a, cut from arsehole to breakfast time type surgery, 12-hour operation, big sort of a deal. And it was the day I was heading into theatre. I was at home, which was at Paradise Point, and I get this call from a US number. I think, oh, fuck.
Scam.
Answer it. Hey, Ryan, Roger Penske here. Oh. Hello, Mr. Penske. Happy to hear from you. Just blew my mind. So I had Roger on the phone for 5-10 minutes or whatever. Now, I was told before this surgery that you should be fine. Should be. So I took notes on a piece of, I used to have this obsession with these big lined Post-it pads. I used to write everything on them. Yeah. And I wrote all these notes and then proceeded to send a long text message to DJ, Steve Brayback, and Campbell Little, who was working for us at the time, saying, just had first contact with Roger Penske, took a photo of my notes, said, just in case anything happens, here's his number, here's his email. He wants us in the States in the next 2 weeks. He's going to send the jet to get us. This is serious.
Fucking hell, that's massive.
So I drove myself like a fucking idiot, driving to Greenslopes, bloody go in. And I remember being in the anaesthetist bay in theatre, saying to the anaesthetist, hey, look, do you know who Roger Penske is? Yeah, rings a bell. Do you remember the red and white Indy cars when IndyCar used to be on a Gold Coast? Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, he just called me and he wants me in the States in 2 weeks. Try not to fuck this up. And then when I woke up, oh, you're good. And then, and the first thing, I remember the first thing when I woke up and when I got the phone back, I was immediately texting Steve, DJ Campbell, going, okay, well, what are we doing? How are we going to do this? So we then flew. I turned down the jet, which DJ to this day still hasn't forgiven me for.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
And I've had a lot of people who are close to Roger and have been with him 20, 30, 40 years have said, you're the only person who's ever turned down the jet. Don't change what you're doing.
What was your theory behind turning down the jet? To fly commercial, so it was on your terms, or what was the?
Well, he offered to cover the cost for us flying commercial, and I ended up flying us economy, charging him economy, and upgrading us to premium out of my own pocket. I just thought that there's no way knowing we could start a relationship here if I'm taking the piss on day one. Come on,
okay.
And I think it was respected.
Yeah.
But yeah, DJ still hasn't forgotten it.
Yeah.
DJ hasn't forgotten that. So we flew 2 weeks. I was in intense.
You probably put
pain.
DJ in a spot though where he could afford to pay it. So
well, true.
Don't forget that one.
There's a few. I need to be on probably sound check number 3 before I tell more of that story. But there's a lot more to that story. But interestingly,
doesn't have to be the only pod.
It's part 2, mate. That's coming in part 2.
Part two, and we'll start after sound check number 3.
Yeah.
But we flew 10 days later. I was in intense pain. So as soon as we landed in the States, I basically stayed in the hotel for a few days. Campbell went and saw Marcus and went and spent an afternoon with Marcus getting all the intel because they'd already engaged with Marcus.
Right. So it's clear at this point Marcus was a must-have if this was going to happen.
Absolutely. And this is 2013. This is the end of 2013. So Marcus was already very much on the radar. Tim Cindric had already read the ops manual, which is more than what half a pit lane have done. And we went into this meeting. We had shirts made with DJR logo embroidered on them, and we all looked the part. We all were wearing RM Williams boots and belts and black slacks and these nice shirts. We all looked the part. So we went to the NASCAR Hall of Fame as a group the day before. Then on the Friday, we went to Mooresville, sat in the boardroom, which had a half-scale IndyCar on the wall from their wind tunnel, a wind tunnel model, which was pretty cool, and all these trophies like the Milwaukee Mile, and just the big, how you go on trophies. Like, it was pretty serious. So we got a tour of the place, then back to the boardroom. RP comes in. We spend effectively the day with them. And what, at the time, and you probably remember this, I was always DJR team spokesperson. I was very much behind the scenes, under the radar, didn't want anyone to know I existed, was still running my political consultancy, trying to get shit done. Yeah. And in this meeting with Roger and Tim, I was the one answering all the questions, which is not the dynamic that we'd set up. I was kind of hoping that Campbell would take the lead, DJ would take the lead, because Roger knew who Dick was. That was part of the reason why it was talked to us. They wanted to be with Ford. So they had the option, instead of going into supercars, they could have run the Ford GT LMP program. So they had, which ended up being run by Chip Ganassi. So they had the option to do that, but they chose supercars instead. Roger has always maintained that he goes racing in the markets where he has business. So motorsport is the marketing arm of his business operations. And basically they were talking to us after they met with us, Tim Cindric and Jamie Allison, who was Mark Rushbrook's predecessor as the head of motorsport for Ford Performance. They came to Homebush, the last event, and they met with Tickford as well after that, because they wanted to be Ford. That was one of the decisions that they made early on. So they had three options, us, Tickford, and then their first hire was John Crennan, formerly of HSV and co-founder of HRT. They basically engaged Crenno to start up a greenfield team, because they went, okay, well, Supercars will organise some recs for us and we'll start from scratch. So then they sent Crenno, after this trip happened, come back to Australia, bit of water goes under the bridge, Homebush, everyone's talking about it. Penske are coming to Australia. It's the biggest news story going around, but there's no way they'll go to DJR, but they're going to do something. So then Penske send Crenno to meet with me up here, and I'd never met Crenno before, but they told me, hey, we need you to suss out this bloke for us because we think he's someone who can help us. And he was working for the Kellys at the time still too. He was transitioning out of being the CEO of Kellys. But the whole reason why the thing was set up was because they wanted Crenno to vet me as someone who was a local who they trusted, who Roger knew through his days with Detroit Diesel and had a lot of mutual acquaintances from Crenno's contacts in the automotive world. And it was fundamentally, look, Crenno, suss out this young bloke. We need to know if he's serious. We need to know if we can be in business with him. But then gave me a bullshit line of...
You're thinking it's the other way.
Yeah. So rocked up at this... I think Longhurst actually owns the pub. I think it was Boardwalk Tavern or something like that. Anyway, rock up at this pub, have a long lunch, and we're there for 4 hours, just chewing the fat, talking. And I'm thinking, this bloke is phenomenal. Like, I've only seen this bloke on TV. I've only seen his name. But yeah, no kidding. No wonder he's been so successful.
Yeah. What
a phenomenal human being. And I was very lucky that he then reported back to Tim Cindric that I wasn't a complete fuckwit.
Yeah.
So...
went well. You got the gig and they did the deal.
Yeah. So then we were thinking it was for 2014 because all this stuff that was happening at the end of 13. And again, I was
thank God it wasn't for me.
Thank Christ. But I was wet.
Could have been fun.
I was wet behind the ears and didn't know what I didn't know. But they were talking about 14, and then it went to, okay, we're going to do 15. And I'm thinking, how the hell are we going to get through 2014? How are we going to make this work? So I said to...
And how close was... Because I remember conversations being like, financially the team was still struggling, wasn't it? Or was that more the Chaz era? Because as a driver, that's often... You kept separate to that, which you appreciate because you're trying to focus on driving the car.
Yeah, because...
But I do remember like talks of, fuck, this is where we might not be... It's not like a month thing, but maybe like we're getting close to this, might not make it.
It was brutal. In 2013 in particular, I would and Mark Fenning reminds me of this all the time, but we would pay staff weekly. And we knew that if we ever missed a day of payroll, we'd come in on Friday and there'd be no one there.
Yeah.
So payroll on Thursday was the most important day of the week for me. So come Tuesday, I'd go, oh shit, there's not enough cash in the bank to do payroll. And at the time payroll was
You got from
$25.
$6 million in 2000 in the bank.
Six mil in the bank and highly profitable with decent sponsorship agreements.
To not having enough in a week to pay.
To not having the 25 grand net needed to pay payroll on a Thursday. So I'd come in on a Tuesday, start freaking out and spend the next 24, 48 hours trying to figure out how do we put this money together without me paying? And oftentimes it was one or the other. But it was pretty brutal.
This is what I think
It's
now
just
as well.
stress.
Constantly learning as well that I had a guy who worked for me a couple of years ago and came in and had a client that was really hard on him and pushing him. And I just said to him, maybe he's got something going on. Like there's a chance that maybe there's something going on, and you just never know what someone else is going through. And I know like 14, we clashed at times, but I didn't know because it is kept from you as it should be as a driver. You want to let your driver focus on driving the car. And there's probably times even the mechanics are like, oh, fucking Ryan was being a prick the other day. And you just never know.
They still say that.
But but it goes through everything, doesn't it? You don't know what someone else is going through.
Sound check.
Oh, there we go.
Crisp.
But yeah, I didn't know that at the time how close that was either.
No, it was
I
brutal.
was at the end of that year I came into that team. But yeah, you really just don't know what others are going through.
The only reason why you came, so RD was managing you at the time, and I was crook on the day, but RD came to Stapleton and met with Steve Brabeck and DJ. And RD had a lot of time for Steve. Huge amount of time for Steve. Respected him enormously and always maintained that Steve was a bloke of his word, a man of his word. And Steve looked him in the eye and said, we're good. And that's how you joined us. Because Steve basically said, no, we're good.
It was December. I remember it was so late in the year I was away, and I remember thinking, because you had signed Percat, I believe.
We had a meeting with Percat, and it was after
You probably didn't want to tell me that thinking I didn't know that one, but I knew I wasn't the first choice as well. Like 13, hey, I can sit back now, and I know I've missed a few Apexes. That year was hard for me. 13, I didn't have much to sell. Super 2 was great. I looked good. Came in, and then 13 was tough, and you guys took almost a punt on me.
Well, we took it one of the way we looked at it was, so we'd spoken to Percat, and Percat, I've heard Percat say later, because I alluded to him the Penske talks, because it was after we'd met with Penske. I alluded it to him, and he subsequently said, the dog said to me that something was happening, and then I later obviously found out that it was. But we took the view that the Super 2 class of 2012 was the best year of Super 2 ever.
I was in there, mate.
So if
Tough
we can
year to be a that was hard. Barber
Rolling up in a first year team single car, not knowing what I was doing, it was a great year to be.
20 grand a weekend Barber was paying to go racing Super 2, and we're in factory like T8 cars. And I mean, Percat was in Walkinshaw. You got Scotty Mackinstone brothers, Chaz in Ford.
But you don't stand a chance, do you? I mean, up against those four drivers, up against those four drivers and those four teams, you didn't stand a chance.
No.
But we took the view, best Super 2 year ever. If we can land one of those four talents, we're doing it right. So Steve and I spoke to Wayne McLaughlin at the end of 2012 to try and get Scotty for 13. Yeah. So he obviously went to GRM, but that's when we first started talking to Wayne. So it went back as far as that because we took that same view then. So when we missed out with Percat, it was like, well, we got to get Scott Pye.
I wish in 13 I got a chance with you guys because I feel like that 13 year was really hard for me to overcome. Like that was a hard year to come back from. I had no confidence at the end. And then even going into the year with you guys, it's like 2-year deal that gets cut. Like by June, I'm like, fuck, I'm out of a drive again. And halfway through a year with a team that's got no money, I can't do shit. And then it's a tough thing, but I don't know. Naivety's bliss when you enter the championship, but it's bloody tough road. But you just got to keep pushing forward. What were you going to say, Bubs?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so Penske then did the deal and came in because I know we've got some juicy stuff we want to get to.
Yeah, yep.
Penske came in.
I didn't get that, Bimmer.
What's that?
The juicy
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're liquoring up, mate.
Yeah, good,
Yeah.
good.
No. There's just...
Mate, I get halfway through this, so the ultimate category. Let's go. That's right.
So Penske came in. The first year Penske was 15.
15, yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously super dominant across.
Took a while to build, but we got there. I mean, I think of 2018 to me is the best championship we won because you think about it. When has a new car been homologated in a vacuum on its own, and that car not won the championship. So that was the year that the ZB came out. So we spent the whole year fighting to make the FGX Falcon competitive. We ended up getting a carbon turret, carbon bonnet.
Yeah.
None of that stuff's easy. So we'd taken over as homologation team in early 2018. We'd had an extraordinary year in 2017, and then tripped over our dick, losing the championship on the last lap of the last race. So we were licking our wounds a little bit, and we knew that we were going to be on the back foot up against a extraordinary race car, which we were.
Do you think that's going to be a challenge with Toyota coming in? Because I feel like the reason sometimes and supercars might not like this, but it also comes back to the teams knowing how to work their magic. Like, I feel like they're going to leave things late to be homologated and get things approved, and then often things get let through when they probably shouldn't, or you end up with a package in the first 2 or 3 rounds that's super competitive, like Volvo.
Yeah.
Some stuff got through on that car at the start that probably shouldn't have.
Shouldn't have, no.
And we know that now, that thing was just like bullshit fast, and the engine and the aero and everything was wrong. But is that something you're concerned about with Toyota? This is not actually in our chat, but it's just made me think, because you're right. Usually a car that comes in first season has an advantage. Do you think that's going to be a real challenge with Toyota when they join?
The interesting thing with Toyota is they're the white whale. So I call Crompton Ahab. I call him Ahab, you got your white whale. Look, he did a phenomenal job.
To get that on, yeah.
You think about it. For everything you can criticise supercars about, for them to have secured Toyota and to have kept it a secret is nothing short of extraordinary.
I cannot believe that was a secret.
The fact it was kept as a secret is because motorsport is terrible at keeping secrets.
Horrific.
And I don't think it was easy to get them across the line. It was years of work.
It was years of work.
So good on them.
So I know a little bit about timetable and some of the other things. So there's a lot to this story, and you don't have enough of these to get me to spill my guts on that. But it's a remarkable story.
But are they going to get the thing homologated properly, do you think, by the end of next year?
So look, here's, again, past the statute of limitations, you hit the nail on the head. I get called a politician all the goddamn time. So my political friends think that I'm a good engineer, and my motor racing friends think I'm a good politician. In real terms, I'm mediocre at both, but I'm good enough to get by. But in 2018, when we homologated the Mustang, we didn't show supercars the full car until we were ready to go track testing.
Until it was too late for them to.
Yeah. And Toyota, the investment that's gone into securing Toyota, don't for 1 second think that supercars won't do whatever it takes to make sure that car rolls out competitive.
100%. And that's my concern, though. That's a worry.
But that's where the onus then falls back on us and on Triple Eight to keep everyone honest. And we've got a great relationship with Jeremy Moore and the guys at Triple Eight.
Has that been strained through all the homologation process?
No. We've tried to rebuild it this year. So we've taken an approach this year where we've taken an approach of no bullshit with supercars, and how do we work with Triple Eight? How do we make this work? And the way we worked together at Windshear with the full scale tunnel stuff, and the way we worked at AVL showed that we can have a very good working relationship. But we had to reset that. Because 2023 was not prosecuted anywhere near as well as it should have been, anywhere near as effectively as it should have been. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but we have to play a role in keeping supercars honest as the other homologation teams. And likewise, there's opportunities for us to work with Walkinshaw because the architecture of their engine is the same as ours. So why wouldn't we work together to make sure they've got a competitive engine if it helps us? Because if I take supercars don't agree with this viewpoint, but I believe we've got a car and an engine package that can win the championship but can't win Bathurst.
Why don't you think it can win Bathurst?
So our theories behind that, we can validate with data. And while supercars don't agree, they have also committed to investing to upgrading supercars dyno here in Queensland to be able to invalidate or validate what we believe is happening there.
But a Mustang was on pole though this year, was it?
Yeah, because this is one that always gets the fans going crazy because Bathurst is, people choose a championship or Bathurst, don't they?
Yeah.
And to say we don't think we can win Bathurst in a Ford with the engine package and aero package we have at the moment is a big thing. But how can you be on pole, provisional, then qualify second and not think you have a chance of winning the race? And then even in the race, Cam Waters, when he went up the escape road, lost almost the same time that he finished behind Will Brown on track.
And look,
so it's like they do.
So Tim Edwards would say is that if there was a car ahead of Brody and Todd, they would have won that race because there wasn't a huge amount of passing if
so
they had track position.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. But so to me, it's a fine line. It's a fine line because the other Ford teams think that it's this much. We don't think it's that big.
Yeah.
So I have to still fight the good fight. But at the same time, I also have to be realistic in terms of what our expectations could be. So for us, we want supercars to continue the work that they're doing to effectively validate or invalidate our working hypothesis with what's going on. And I think that will lead to effectively a spec for Bathurst.
Is it drag or engines, mate, that you see?
It's barometric pressure. So for us, it's the altitude. That's what our theory is.
So when you get to the top of the mountain or the altitude at Bathurst,
or just the
altitude at Bathurst in general. General, it's the next highest place we go to is Taupo, but Taupo's not an engine track. So we think there's a few things going on, and supercars are testing at the bend and working through quite a few things in a couple of weeks' time, which will be important. But we think that there is scope, and supercars, I believe that what we're saying is credible enough that they're investing to upgrade their facility to check it out,
to be able to prove it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, for us to then go credibly to Triple Eight and say, look, this is what needs to happen, was for supercars to go to Triple Eight, hey, this is what the Ford's going to do. That needs to be backed up in data. It can't be speculative. It can't be, we think this. It's got to be, here it is.
So what do they do, Ryan? Is it like when you go training in an altitude gym, they basically do that with an engine dyno room? Is that what they do? They set it to a certain level?
It's the ability to measure air pressure on inlet and exhaust. Yeah. That's really what it is. And it's a significant investment. They're prepared to look at it. So we believe that is a significant factor. And it's something other Ford teams have talked about. So we've been quite open with the other Ford teams on what we believe is going on. And it's something that we think needs to be worked through.
I think it's good that you're acknowledging, though, as well, that you do think you could still win the championship in a Ford. Because I reckon the moment you're always grasping at parity is your excuse, you stop looking at what 1% you can do better. Because then if you can get the parity right, but you've still improved your own backyard, you've got an even better chance. So it's like, it's good to hear you asked, and that's probably why you've gone and got George, Brody, Tom. I'm sure there's other people as well you added that we don't know about, but you still got to work at what you can do better, and then hopefully you get that.
That's
I feel like some
right.
teams stop their progress by focusing on, they're waiting for a handout or something, and it's
they do.
And I'm sure even T8's the same. We're like, okay, if we get it, great, but if we don't, what else are we doing? Like,
so
we need to be still working.
We've had discussions with. So Mark Rushbrook talks about building a brotherhood between the Ford teams, and that's pretty hard when you want to destroy each other on the racetrack. But there's got to be.
NASCAR, isn't it?
It is.
Is there enough funding from Ford coming, though, to be able to do that? Like, I think NASCAR's a little bit different, isn't it, where the manufacturers are tipping in some serious coin? It's
different. The market is different, and the investment is different. But there's still a common thread between between 5 of the teams. It's the common thread is that we've all got a pony badge on the front of our cars. So I think there's certainly credibility and merit to what he's talking about. But it's a very different mindset for us because we try to destroy each other. But if you look at, you blokes have talked about it, you look at the teams championship, other than Triple Eight, the Ford teams they're all right.
Yeah, you take them out, it's a Ford 1 through 5.
1 through, yeah, it's a decent.
Which is pretty scary.
Yeah, it's decent.
And I know things weren't fair for Erebus this year. Like, they had a tough road, so I'm sure they could have done better, but it's still only, Adelaide was 3 Chevs in the top 10, didn't we say, Barbs?
Yeah, something like that.
In the shootout.
But we've had discussions. So early on, and certainly last year, it was easy to go, the problem's parity.
Yep.
And you're absolutely right. When you blame parity, you're then not looking internally and going, how do we make the chassis better?
Yep.
How do we make the car faster?
And it's not saying parity might be not an issue.
But there's only so much you can
There's nothing
control.
you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do about it. You got to
that.
piss with the dick you got. So when you take that on board, when you take that into consideration, you then try to make the most of what you're doing. So for us as a homologation team, you try and separate off the blokes who are working on the setups of cars from the blokes who are working on the parity challenges, whatever that may be. So we've had quite a journey, particularly with engine this year. Bit of aero, obviously, last year.
Yep.
But yeah, the job's not done yet. But I genuinely and sincerely believe we can win the championship, not Bathurst. Like I said, supercars disagree with that. I'm sure Triple Eight would disagree with that. But that's what we believe. I think the other Ford teams would probably throw that out as well.
Chaz was still competitive at the start of the year, though. I like the debating, like saying you can't win Bathurst is a big call though at the moment.
Yeah.
I still think, like, Chaz was so fast at the 500 at the start of the year.
What
happened since then?
I honestly thought, if you'd held a gun to my head and said, how will Chaz go at Bathurst? I would have said, yeah, you can put money on him winning that race. Because when I think about the development that we did with the motor through the year and how good they were at the 500, Because if they had just a tickle more motor at the 500, they would have won both of those races. I'm adamant about it. So I honestly thought going to Bathurst, Walkinshaw, yep. But that's the thing, is what it goes to show, though, too, is that the world moves on. Like, you set up evolution and development. If you punch a setup in that worked at the beginning of the year, it might not necessarily work for you now because everyone's moving forward.
Yeah.
See, if you stand still, and just particularly now with Gen 3, all the cars are the goddamn same. So if you stand still even for a minute, someone else is going to learn something that is going to take you another couple of events to learn. And you get left behind.
The chassis. Do you mind if I jump in, Bubs?
No, go for it.
You say about the homologation being the same. I don't know why Supercars made it newsworthy that you change chassis supplier.
Oh, God.
When it's a
Yeah, they're meant to be the same. What's the difference? I mean, it's a different guy welding it together. I understand that, but
why is it newsworthy? It's a homologated part that you should be able to buy off the shelf from, and you wouldn't even know where it came from. Why is it such a big deal that Jimmy's building it? And I know he's a good builder, but like Elliot and I were like, why is this newsworthy when it's a homologated part?
Because it's newsworthy because basically we race 12 times a year, go into 13 times a year, oftentimes a decent chunk of time between events. If you've got something that will get clicks, you've got to run it. You've got to make more of it than what it is.
Well, why did you change, though, to Jimmy?
Well, the principal reason for it is I hired the reigning champion and he said, I want my chassis. Okay.
And you haven't asked Tom why he wants that chassis built?
of course he has. Look at him.
But that's right. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, exactly. But I think...
What's the benefit, apart from that's what Brody wanted?
Because I'm sure you said to Tom, well, hang on then, Tom, or sorry, George or Brody, why? Because... Yeah, there we go.
Listen,
so there's got to be something.
The objective for any team. The objective for
Is this
any
the
team,
political
it is.
answer we're getting here?
Listen, you might very well think that I couldn't possibly comment, but the important thing for any team is to win, and you do whatever it takes to win. So one of the things that we're doing at the moment,
Well, T8 just won. Didn't you buy their chassis, or wouldn't you buy their chassis?
we like being different to T8 if we can. But here's what I appreciate with you two blokes, is you're seeing what we're doing.
Mm.
So we are expanding our team and we are getting the best people, because if you don't change and expect different results, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
So we've had to invest in people, and we're continuing to, and we're expanding our organisation. I've got some pretty remarkable CVs in my inbox, and we're going to continue hiring. We've got a great group of people who know how to win. We just need to give them the resources and bring on more people with fresh ideas, fresh energy to make that happen. So for us, it's less about the chassis as an individual light on the hill. It's about the total investment that we're making into season 2025 and beyond.
That was a good spin.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well done. I can see why
Appreciate
you've
that.
done an amazing career in politics. No, but talking on people, that's a couple of things I wanted to ask, because we've chatted about it just off air and over a beer, and I find it interesting that DJR went down the path of hiring someone in your CEO, David Noble, from outside the sport.
Yep.
Because normally, like, history would say most people hire within the sport.
Yep.
Which to me seems strange, because you're not going to get anything new, right? Where you guys have taken the glasses off and you've looked outside the sport and you've gone for someone that had an AFL background. What was it just the best person for the job, or what was the theory behind that?
So there was a couple of things at play. My health was not great, and I needed to step back. I've basically been absent from the team for 3 years. So I've been back this year, but even not in a completely full-time capacity. I've come back and gone, okay, how do we prosecute a campaign to be competitive and win races in 2025? So that's been my whole focus this year. But in hiring David Noble, we needed someone who could lead our organisation. And his background's very different. And he would be the first to put his hand up and say, I'm not a motorsport bloke.
We quite like that, though.
But
That's
he's-
what I
but
mean
he's-
as a compliment.
But
I
he's,
quite
an
like him looking outside.
but he's an extraordinary sports administrator.
Yep.
He understands people. He's got a competitive edge to him that is unique. But his approach to people and athlete management and career development, coming from that AFL background, when you got to deal with that with 40 blokes in AFL.
Mm.
So he's taken a real front seat. He's taken the front seat in developing Brody for next year.
Yeah,
And
fantastic.
in getting Brody ready and giving him what he needs, because that athlete side is something that is a massive strength of his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the career development for athletes and the career development for administrators and people within our organisation is a massive point of difference that I've seen in David Noble from anyone else I've ever worked with in
Bit of an old
motorsport.
school mentality, aren't we, motorsport?
Yeah,
We are,
and,
yeah.
and- and that's where I'm fascinated by this stuff, like the business side of it and the people side. And I think, motorsport, especially for DJR recently, since Penske left, it's probably more shit days than good days.
Yeah.
And who's the main motivator of the start? Is that David's role now to keep everyone going and show them the light at the end of the tunnel, or whose role? Is that why? Because as you say, in footy, there's 40, 50, 60 people on a team.
Yeah. You got to lead with your chin. So for us, it's David and myself.
Yeah.
So we want to encourage the staff. And again, we've had some people move on, but no one's moved on that we haven't been okay with the direction that we're heading in.
Yeah.
So, and it's difficult because there are some people who are leaving our organisation who we've won championships with. So some of those decisions are incredibly difficult decisions to make. But again, if you don't change, it means you're happy with the status quo. And we're just not. We're just not. So David is a great leader from that perspective, but we've got great leaders throughout our organisation. We've got people who've been there for 30 years, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
And obviously you've signed Brody, which is awesome. Everyone knows how good Brody is.
Yep.
Real asset, no doubt, for next year.
So we've never announced officially, but yes, we've hired George Collins and Tom Moore.
Has that really never been announced?
No.
Really?
No.
Oh, we have a scoop. No one's going to know.
This is another
that.
scoop.
Exclusive.
Yeah. It's about a few months late, but it feels like I thought that was announced. That was not announced.
No,
Jeez,
not announced.
Fuck, why didn't we
And
get Shane
Isn't
to
Tom
announce that?
already on his way up to
And
Brisbane?
I've
We should have got Shane to
I've
announce that one
secured my
too.
co-drivers for next year as well. So
Who you got? Tell us who you got.
I've got, so Brody will be joined by his Bathurst winning co-driver Todd Hazelwood,
Nice.
and staunch stalwart of DJR. 10 years he will have been with us next year. Tony D'Alberto will be
fantastic.
co-driver.
He was my co-driver
I
at
love
one
it.
point.
TD's
Well,
a legend.
you got him because I remember you saying to me, I went to you and I said, okay, who do you want?
Yeah.
TD, got to get him.
He goes, I want a fiery little Italian.
Yeah,
Sign me up.
I want a bloke
that's
who's
good.
got
That's
the
awesome.
fire in the belly, and he's been with us. I think he's third behind Dick Johnson and John Bauer. It must be fourth. Dick Johnson, JB, Stevie J, TD, longest serving driver.
And he did such a good job, I thought, at the Enduros this last campaign.
He has always
obviously kept it
been
very close
solid
on where
as.
everyone was.
Yeah.
And he was very quick. Especially, it's hard relative to co-drivers because they're often in the race at the end of the main drivers. They're in the race at the end when everything's great, like track and everything. But I thought compared to mains, he did a very good job.
He did.
So that's a good signing.
But you also got to give him a good car. See, I don't.
It makes your life so much easier when
I
you
don't,
drive
think,
good.
I don't think at Sandown or Bathurst we gave either of our young blokes a decent car to steer. So if you're a twice a year driver and you get in a shit box, it's likely the delta between main and co is decent because the main's
Yeah.
used to getting a shit box.
No,
and
I
your
really
co's
felt
not.
like I made the difference in the T8 car though this year.
Well, everyone's talking about
Have a
it.
go.
Everyone's talking about it. So you got to do the orange man's voice when you say so. People tell me, they say, Scott, they say, there's a reason why we won at Sandown. It was me. It was all me. Everybody knows.
That's getting cut up for socials big time. That is going viral.
That
I
was
love
good.
it.
The orange man too. I love that.
We'll have to send you a hat and you can do that with the hat
Oh,
on.
we do have a Make Supercar Great again.
I've
I'd love
seen
to see you
those.
in that hat. We
Gotta
sold a
make
lot.
supercars great again. That's what we got to do.
Oh,
I love that.
People tell me, they say, Mr. President, we got to make supercars great again. Sorry, I need to stop doing
I
it.
love
I'm going to get in so much shit for
I
doing
love
that.
that.
This one, okay, so it hasn't been talked about a lot since it happened. And
Gee, I've just given you two scoops. Like, come on. I mean, yes,
They're
everyone's
amazing.
talking
You're
about it, but it's official.
You're doing well.
and there's also talk of the driver weight being split between the two, which for
Yes.
me is a big relief because I think, even at TD, I think it's nearly 20 kilos like
Mhm.
last year. So I'm excited about that. But I think that you got two co-drivers that, because you're going to need competitive guys now,
do.
especially.
You
And
do.
both
You're
of those,
investing
like what
heavily.
Todd did in Trans Am this year was unreal. TD is still doing, obviously, he did the TCR this year.
Yep.
Not sure what his plan is next year, but he's still super match fit and fast. So
He'll be driving something.
it's
G-
going to be really
GTL.
important to have a solid driver. You can't just bank on having a bloody 30 kilo advantage anymore.
No.
So I reckon, yeah, that's awesome. And also TD is one of the best guys in pit lane. He's like a Luffy. Like you can't.
He's awesome.
He's
I've
just
never heard
good to
anyone
be
say anything
around.
bad about him.
He is.
He just makes you feel good. Every time I see him, it always comes to, you
He's
feel
just a good
better
bloke.
about yourself when he says good.
So we've got a WhatsApp group with all of our staff on it, and every time we send anything out like a happy birthday, he's the first person to respond. Like he's
Yeah.
so, despite the fact he's not up here, he's so embedded within our organisation, knows everyone, is mates with everyone, and then gets in the car and gets the job done. I mean, you can't ask for.
And it's not
anything
easy
more
as
than
a
that.
co because I've experienced it this year where you really want to feel part of the team, but it's difficult because you're only racing twice a year. So you've really got to put the effort in to get to
do.
know everyone personally because you almost take it for granted that you spend so much time with everyone and you get to know them on a personal level because you go, oh shit, it's actually quite difficult to get to know and build those relationships. But for TD, he would go into those events now so comfortable and confident. That's quite hard to, that was a tough thing for me this year. You go, fuck, there's no excuses now. You're in a good car, do your job.
Well, he was out there driving. He was out there driving with you at QR this week. He
I
came up.
I don't know if he was in the
right
car,
start.
but I think I might have pissed one of your blokes off because I don't get to race very often. So I'm like,
Scott was using the hot lap session like it was the bloody QR 500.
Dive bombing.
I was up the arse. So I think it was Davo. I nudged him into 4.
God,
That's getting
with
cut
the
up again.
with the passenger in.
You got the
Oh,
ass of Davo.
shit.
Wow.
You with a passenger in, you gave him a bit of a hand going.
Yeah. Down into turn 3 as well. Nearly outbreak myself.
So he probably owes you some money. He's
lunging
probably
everyone.
done your rear bar, mate.
Yeah, well,
I don't want to steer away from enduros just yet, though, because 2019 I know was really tough. Bathurst. It's a controversial one, and it's one that
is it? Why?
well, there's a couple. There's 2
Jeez.
controversies. There's the engine issue. One I wanted to ask, which you may have touched at the time, but the engine change after qualifying. What was it that prompted that? What was it that made you guys want to change?
I can tell you
Go
because
ahead.
we had the same issue with Fabian's car on the Sunday. So for whatever reason, Ford had changed the casting of the D3 cylinder head. So I think Roush Yates were doing the castings. It had changed supply. So instead of coming from Ford, Roush were organising their own supply. And we just got a batch of heads in that was soft.
Yeah.
So we had an engine overheating because it didn't have good cylinder pressure and good seal. So that's why we changed that engine going into the race. And again, it's just the rules are the same today as what they were then.
Yeah.
You can't change an engine without supercars agreeing to it. So Craig Hasted looked at the data we were looking at and said, yeah, you're probably not going to make 1,000 Ks.
Yeah.
But then on Sunday, we had the exact same thing with Fabian's car. Now, at the time, we didn't know it was soft cylinder heads.
Yeah.
We had the same thing with that car overheating,
Yeah.
which meant, and I'm very much at fault as much as anyone, but it meant we weren't doing our jobs Sunday, particularly through that course of stops. We were all doing something else because we were trying to put water in that car and get it to the end of the race.
I mean, the thing is as well, like the Deborah stuff is still something that's like it's joked about. There's not many things that actually
I know.
transcend a season and just keep going, you know. And that's one of them. Do you look back
There
at
will
that?
be comments on when you post this on socials. There will be 50 comments that are Deborah's.
Yeah,
without
probably.
without a doubt.
Actually, yeah, light up our comment section with Deborah's. But I mean, do
Maybe
you
we'll
look
get a
back at
stubby
that?
holder done.
Do you look
Oh,
back at that
Jesus.
now and think, would you guys have done anything different in that race? I
Yes.
feel for Fabs. I feel like he was collateral damage in that one. You might not agree, but as from a driver, like we just do what we're told. I don't know. Seems like you have a different opinion. Like what went down there? What happened in that moment?
It's a difficult. Look, I do have a different opinion, but it's a difficult one because you can never properly put yourself in someone else's shoes. But there were so many failings that day, and the biggest one was from me. So we were planning on putting water in that car, and the people who should have been watching the screen, or the data engineers who were watching, should have been empowered to let the engineers know, or to let management know that there was an issue. At the time, we didn't know there was a car doing 120 Ks on Conrod. I didn't know. I didn't see it. I didn't know. So the biggest failings on me.
But did it not say? I thought at the time that Rowdy, that's Mark Fenning, was I think the engineer on
He
the
was,
radio.
yeah. Yeah.
Was he not effectively saying go slower?
He was saying
That's what he meant by
So-
Deborah's?
to this day, I do not know where Deborah's came from. I honestly can say hand on heart.
Yeah.
I can swear, I can do a stat deck right here. I honestly don't know where it came from. But what I do know, we forensically went through where everyone was at the time. Now, as you know, when you're at the front of pit lane, you can't see Murray's Corner. Can't see it because there's elevation in pit straight. Mark Fenning was there. He was on effectively on the wall, talking to the driver with no access to a big screen, without the ability to see what had happened. So we knew it was a double stack, and we knew that car was overheating. But the biggest mistake of all was that the people who should have reacted seeing that car come on, because losing the time across the top, that's pretty typical double stack stuff. He lost, I think, 17 seconds across the top coming down the hill.
It's a lot though. You might lose 5.
17s, that's a fair chunk, man.
17's like I'd nearly get out and let Elliot drive to be 17 seconds off the pace.
It's decent. It is
Wow.
decent.
Elliot's just got the
We're meant to
drive by.
be, we're meant to be
decent.
attacking him, all right? Not me.
Yeah.
We're meant to be the same team.
Look, it is decent, but you can lose that sort of time coming down.
Yeah.
But you can't lose that time on fucking Conrad. You
No,
can't
I
do
know.
it.
When it looked like
It's a little bit
the
obvious
limiter
on
coming
Conrad,
down
yeah.
Conrad.
It was, and I got to tell you, if I'd seen it, I would have jumped on the cans and said, "Fucking put your foot down." I would have
Yeah.
done it myself, but I didn't see it because I wasn't where I should have been.
Yeah.
I was trying to help the boys get ready for a double stack and putting water in a car that we didn't think would make the race.
Yeah.
But to that point, when
So-
Fabs didn't come into the pits, we thought he was stopped on the side of the road because everyone's out.
took so long.
Everyone's
Yeah.
out for a double.
Car's almost serviced and gone, and you're like,
Everyone's
hang
out
on,
for a
where's the other
double
one?
stack. And we're like, what the fuck's going on? What's going on here? We thought that it stopped because
Yeah.
the water temp, I think it was over 100, I think at the time. The thing was cooking.
I know it's a tough question. I do want to bring up because like we want to talk about stuff. I feel like no one's really talked about it because it's a bit of a taboo. And one thing we've noticed is with media here in Australia, they're very afraid of upsetting team owners. And I feel like often the small guy gets the brunt of it and they don't want to. Whereas I want to ask these sort of questions, and most people avoid asking a team owner that question because they got to ring you next year and go, hey, can we get an interview with Brody? And you go, no, get fucked, mate. You asked me that question.
I remember what you said.
Yeah, I mean, this could
Ryan's
be our
like-
last podcast with Dr. Ryan Story.
Yeah, Ryan's like, part 2 can get fucked.
But no, I do. The idea, we're trying to be transparent and give an insight into a situation that's very famous. Like, we can't not.
Here's
acknowledge that.
what look, I have spoken about this before. I had death threats after that race
That's where it
I
goes
needed to get,
this-
I needed to have 24/7 police protection. And that went on for a long time, like a long time. I had property damage, all sorts of things went on. That race affected me more than any other, and still does to this day. So that's one trophy. I've got the Bathurst I've got the Peter Brock trophy. It should be the one that I'm proudest of, and it's not. But I've never fought harder for a race win in my damn life. But also, it's almost cathartic too watching that race, because you have 40% of the audience will agree, will side with the Ford winning. 40% of the audience will be pro Chev and therefore Ford are no good, and that's a race win that shouldn't be on our tally. And you've got sort of 20% in between. So it's one of those interesting ones. But every now and then I will watch, and Supercars put up before Bathurst this year the last, I think, 30 laps, which was from when that safety car happened. Because people forget that after that set of stops, Jamie had the lead of the race, and they split the strategies between Jamie and SVG. So Jamie went for broke, hoping for a safety car for everyone to stop to end the race, and basically it meant he had to refuel out of sequence. Whereas SVG and Scotty conserved fuel to try and make it to the end. So we were effectively outright second after those stops, and then through Jamie going on a different strategy, that's how we inherited the lead of that race and won that race. So it's cathartic for me to watch things like that, but it's
tough.
It's tough, yeah.
There's. I mean, I had one at Newcastle where I actually let Scotty through. He was driving for you, and I was driving for Walkinshaw at the time, and it was in a race. We've talked about it a little bit, where I let him through because I was battling Slady. It was 1 point between us in the championship. I think I was going for 6th in the championship.
What year was this?
2019, I think it might have been.
Okay.
And I can't remember who was battling for the championship. Anyway, it was T8 versus DJR, and because I was in HRT, everyone assumed, or in the Holden team, that I would be trying to help another Holden team win. But I actually wasn't even thinking about that. And Starry, my engineer, said, don't fight Scotty.
Yep.
Slady's behind him on fresh tyres. We need to minimise the time you lose with him, because he's coming. He just pitted for greens. I think it was the race he had the incident with Lounsey maybe, was blazing through the field. And I actually indicated, which isn't uncommon. Sometimes we do that. He wasn't my fight that day, and he was on green tyres. I was at the end of a stint. And I let him go, didn't lose any time, and I held off Slady by less than a second. It was like, and I got 6th in the championship. Slady finished 7th, and it doesn't sound like much, but for us as a team, that was our goal. I got out the car, and within half an hour, I got hundreds of messages. One guy threatened me. He said, "I got a broken arm, but I'm still going to come and kick your ass. I'm going to bash you." He threatened me in an MMA fight. His son was his profile picture. I remember thinking, like, the example you're setting, man, like, is just terrible. But you do get death threats and that, and you think at the end of the day, like, there's a lot that goes into this sport, and there's still the human factor at the end, and we love the passion. But one thing I've noticed with the pod, I feel like the comment section is becoming it's almost being more diffused, because we're actually showing the human element. We're showing that we are people behind the
When you
helmet.
reply, you disarm. You might have someone come at you with a huge amount of venom and have a crack behind the keyboard. But as soon as you engage them, oftentimes you disarm them, and then you can have a proper conversation. You might agree to disagree, but when they see there's a human face responding and that there's that level of engagement, you get something back. But it's interesting. I know you both have talked about this too, like the no social hate thing. It's lovely in theory, but you've got to have thick skin to play this game. It's only when it gets beyond a level of tolerability that it's like, come on.
It's almost not achievable. We just try to encourage the positive people to be the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah.
You can't stop the hate, and also we still want people to be passionate. Like you say, have a thick skin.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is we're in show business. If we're not putting on a show, we're not in business. It's really that goddamn simple.
Yeah,
but you got to have a thick skin.
Yeah, and it's one thing I think NASCAR do well is, at least from their official point of view, they're never named.
Christ, am I beating you blokes?
No, I've nearly finished. I'm like hanging out for a piss. We've got 20 minutes left, but No, go
Sorry,
on about
Bob.
the
No,
names.
you're right.
Because it's a good point Elliot's saying it, but
Yeah, I just think it's something that NASCAR do well is, and maybe not with the team owners, because team owners are always going to be in the spotlight. Everyone knows who you are, right? Same with drivers, but their officials, it's called the NASCAR official. So here, if Beardo makes a call and people don't like it, he'll cop shit. And they'll throw shit at Craig Baird, the person, not the DSO of supercars. Where in NASCAR, it's the NASCAR official made that decision.
it's like everyone knew Massey, hey?
yeah, it's same
Yeah.
with Michael Massey. He got
The poor guy, whether you agree or not.
yeah, he got yeah,
but it was everyone
he
knew
got
Michael Massey's
thrown- he
name,
got
and it was
thrown
like
under
they
the bus.
personalised the person.
yeah, correct. Where it should just be, and that's like you're saying at Bathurst when you were copping death threat, that was your job to get the team the best results. So you were doing your job, whether it was right or wrong, whatever. You were doing your job, and you shouldn't get death threats for going to work and doing your job.
Yeah, agreed. I think that should definitely cop shit, but it can go too far. And it went
Yeah.
too far with Massey. It went way
That's
too
another
far
one,
with Matt. Like he's got.
And that went
He's-
global too. That's just not in Australia.
Oh,
New
mate.
Zealand. That was
I
like
can't-
Scary, and F1 can be like that's a big beast.
I
Some
can't
of the people
imagine.
who support that
I
could
can't
go-
imagine how he got himself through that period. But you know what Michael's like. I mean, Michael.
Ripper guy.
The thing with Massey, and particularly when we worked with him when he was DSD and King of the Kids out here, he would tell you before you walked into a steward's hearing you were fucked.
Yeah.
And you knew that he'd made his mind up. And his interpretation was not going to change, but you always knew where you stood with him.
Yeah.
And I remember when that shit happened at Abu Dhabi and the race finished under green, it's like, yeah, that's Michael would be doing what FOM and what the FIA would want. And he would be hell bent, like this is what it is, and this is the rules, and this is what I'm going to do. And he would be immovable. But I kind of respect that in officials.
Yeah.
Like when you know where you stand with someone before you go into the room, that's kind of a good thing.
Queensland Raceway against Massey, you'd say that as an example. Beardo was the DSO, and me and JC came together. We were teammates, but we fought really hard, probably too hard for teammates, and we come together in a race. He came off worse, just saying. I got out of it better. But we went in the hearing, and Beardo was telling me this is what you're getting done for, and I argued. And you know me, I'm not a bad arguer. Good. And Massey actually said, "Can you just leave the room, Scott?" After our debate.
He swayed him.
And I came back in, and Massey did get swayed. He actually
Wow.
let me off.
I've
Massey said,
never ever
I
known
know.
that to happen. That is
And
extraordinary.
Now you said that, that's probably one of my proudest moments now that I feel like I've swayed the and Massey will verify that it was Queensland Raceway. We had a massive debate, Beardo and I just, argued it, and I wasn't leaving the room until I got my way. And I genuinely believe though, it wasn't one of those instances where I looked back and felt I did something mad. So it was one of those ones as a driver, I was like, I just wouldn't let it go, that this was not what I get what you're saying, but this is the one I'm telling you. We often have a big handbook of lies and bullshit, but this isn't one of those instances. Massey
Shit.
actually, and I've respected him so much for that, because I think he could see that this was a genuine run-in between people that were both fighting for a piece of tarmac that disappeared. And he gave us both a stern, fucking pull your heads in, guys. But I've always thought he did respect the racer there that we were just racing
never
for.
known him to do that. Blows my mind.
So yeah, big
Well
fan,
done.
Massey. But
Yeah.
one thing I wanted, so before we, I want to get onto supercars, and we do want to. We're all about trying to make it better. And with our pod, I don't know if you've known, but we've been blown away by the reception we've got, and we're fourth at the moment in Australia for all sports pods, which I'm very proud of. The highest we reached was second last week, and I'm trying so hard to get to number one. Cricket at the moment
drop
is,
out of the top 10 now. Sorry,
but,
boys.
but cricket
Sorry,
is going
boys.
so well at the moment. It's tough to beat those guys. But what it's shown me is that even in a sport with a smaller demographic, we have such an engaged group of people that with the right content and the right messaging, you can beat ball sports, right? Because podcasting's massive. AFL's huge in it. NRL's big. Cricket's obviously big. We're ahead of every ball sport except cricket at the moment. And that blows me away. But it also shows that if we do the right thing through broadcast and even our social platforms and stuff, we can trump. And I did a little bit of research, and I could not see. I searched top sports in Australia. I searched most participated. Obviously, we're never going to be that because race cars are expensive to compete in. But we don't register as supercars on any metric nearly through Google. And Google's the most common search engine you got. If you search common sport without prompting supercars, we don't register, which is a shame. NBL is ahead. We're not even in, and we do get more attendance than them, but it's they don't think of putting us in the search. But
the thing I always think about how much it costs for a family to go to a race.
yeah,
So mum and dad and 2 kids, they're lucky if they get changed for $1,000 to go to the Adelaide 500 and be in the grandstand.
but the last
It's But that's why we've got such an engaged fan base, is because of the level of investment required to be a supporter. It's unbelievable. So you have to respect these people. Even when they're shit canning you and calling you a flog, you still have to respect them because they're the reason why we're in business.
But like the last article, and you're right, like we do definitely have a really passionate fan base. But 2016, so doing the Google search, like 2016 was like the last real positive article about TV. We had 2 years left on the deal at the time, and it's saying how we're knocking on the door of some of the bull sports for Fox Sports popularity. And then the last one I found was actually a really positive quote from 2005. I mean, these are getting years ago. And it was from Cochrane, actually, when it was the Avesco Championship. And he said at the time that he believes the Ford versus Holden battle has the potential to succeed like NASCAR in the US and become more popular than the entrenched bull sport codes. Now that, for me, we've lost a little bit of the relevancy with the car market. We still have the Ford and Chevs, it's still there. But what do you think as a sport we can do? Because it's the podcasting is showing they're out there, the people love it. But what do you think we can do as a sport to increase our popularity through Fox Sports paid, whether it's free to air or whatever? But what can we do as a sport?
Well, there's a couple of interesting things. So if you talk to Patrick Delaney, who's the CEO of Foxtel, and at the moment Foxtel's being shopped around.
Yep.
So owned by News Corp and Telstra, they're trying to sell to the highest bidder. But in terms of bang for buck, for what they pay for supercars, they do pretty well. Like the broadcast deal for supercars is not significant. It's the reason why our calendar is condensed and compressed, because effectively Foxtel send supercars a check and in return they get a fully finished product. Supercars do all of their own television production. Effectively, we're a traveling roadshow that goes all around the country and Foxtel just broadcasts the feed. Compared to every other sport they're involved in, it doesn't work that way. It's usually the networks taking the lead with the production. So it's massive. So the outgoings for supercars is huge. But one of the things we need to stop doing and stop pretending is that we're better than the bull sports. We've got to stop saying we're the number 3 sport in the country. Well, we're not, but we can be. But if you delude yourself into thinking you're better than you are, you're never going to improve. And there's a couple of good stories around this year. The Toyota thing is massive. It puts massive credibility back into what we do. And it shows that there is enormous potential for growth. So we need to be realistic about who we are, and we need to be a better product for our supporters, because the barriers of entry to be a Supercars fan are huge. The hat's $60, the ticket's $250, the membership's $150 a year. Yep. It keeps adding up. When you compare that to joining an AFL club where you get to go to all the home matches,
$30 a season or something.
I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, we're not in the same postcode as those sports, but we've got a passionate fan base. And we need to talk about the personalities within our sport. We need to highlight and continue to improve the on-track product. If we do that, we can grow.
Yeah, the championship, the end of the season next year is going to be great. I think that's a really good thing they've done. It's a big risk, but hopefully it's an evolving thing. So look, I'm on the Supercars Commission. I'm on the Supercars Board. Personally, as a purist, I'm not the biggest fan of the final system. But the way that it's been researched, the way that fan engagement has been sought out, the fact that it's changed and the fact that it's been very well considered, how do you not support it? I mean, It's fantastic. And you know what? Maybe it evolves over the course of the next couple of seasons. But for us as DJR, with the investments we've made, it gives us 3/4 of the year to get our shit together. We just got to hover in the top 10, and we know if we get our shit together near the end of the year, we can prosecute a case and genuinely be in the hunt for the championship. But you can't criticize the sport for doing that and being prepared to effectively tread on the dicks and make big changes.
Yeah.
But the Toyota thing, we can't undersell that. Everyone who's been involved in the sport since Noah was a boy has tried to get those people involved. Even TC came out and said, full credit to them. I mean, Tony Cochrane is hardly a flag waver for supercars in its current iteration with its current shareholding and everything else. He's just not. And that's TC. TC is TC. You can't change him, but you also can't disrespect the bloke for what he achieved when he ran the sport and built it up from nothing. But even he said, shit, I tried for years to do that. I couldn't do it. What an extraordinary achievement. So there's got to be some good stuff happening for us to be able to do that. But we have to be more accessible to the punters. We have to provide product to them that doesn't always mean they have to hit their hip pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. And what about increasing, because the cost of racing is getting more and more? What about as a team? What can you guys do that's more of an offering to, whether it is stuff like this, what we're doing here, but what do you think you see as opportunity to add value for the partner for
Well,
punters at
as
home.
teams, we're our own worst enemies. We will spend stupid money to go that little bit faster. We will do things that on the surface make no business sense, make no sense because we're just trying to be competitive. So you have to try and balance that out as much as you can. But that accessibility to the punter is so important.
Yeah.
If you're so corporate all the time, you won't get them to engage back. We had our teammates night, which you were involved with for a number of years. We had a teammates night in the lead up to Gold Coast, and I didn't realise it was being streamed. I was fairly animated, shall we say, and then found out, like, we had 120 odd people there. Found out at the end that it was being streamed and sort of shit myself a little bit. But the point is that you try and be candid with those people because they're the biggest fans you got.
Yeah.
The people who put their money where their mouth is for a membership, they're likely the same people who buy more merch off you than anyone else. They're likely the same people who will support you even when you finish wherever we finished in the team's championship, fifth or whatever it is. They support you through good and through bad. They're the people that you need to do everything you possibly can to protect and look after. But we need to continue we can't have our hand out for every interaction that our supporters and potential supporters have with our sport. Because if we do that, we drive them away. Because there are cheaper ways to entertain themselves. The barriers of entry of being a Supercars fan are higher than any other sport. We need to recognise that and be prepared to give back.
Yeah, and the tough thing is it's an expensive sport too. Like you got to fund it somehow. So that's as well where we want the fans to understand that, like, we don't just pick a number out. It's unfortunately expensive to put our events on. It's not like going to a stadium that's there all year. You pay a $30 ticket entry and it's fine. But you go to a street circuit and it is millions to put the show on. So you've got to bring that money back in somehow.
It's interesting. So the shareholders in DJR now are the Ralph family, Brett and Sean Ralph, DJ and myself. And Brett and Sean collect sports franchises. They're a significant shareholder in the Melbourne Storm and in
So am I, actually. Don't go to the games, but I'm a member.
Thanks for that. I'm sure the Rouse will be deeply appreciative of that.
He's a
voice.
big
Thank
fan.
you.
I've just got
Last
ducked out of my
couple of years
credit card yesterday too for next year. So there you go.
Oh, terrific.
He's just personally funding your race team.
Fantastic. Well, look,
Yeah.
we really appreciate that, Buzz. Thank you very much. But with the experience they have with these other codes and with these other seriously professional sports franchises, they came into Supercars and went, wow, like, there's serious investment in this. You've got big business in this. There's ball sports who would kill to have some of the things you have. So we got to celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
As much as we need to reflect upon the areas where we need to get better and improve on. There's plenty of them, but some of the shit we get right, we do better than anyone.
Yeah.
Well, you've said it before, Scotty, and it's true. Like the AFL Grand Final will get 100,000 people at MCG for a footy game. Yet at the Adelaide 500, we had 249,000 people
Massive
across the week.
Yeah.
So
I know it's still like
the numbers are
some of the same people, but it's a big number.
Well, I think
but it doesn't get pumped up like the Grand Final, does it? Like
no.
They celebrate in such a big way that, you know, they have days where they do things through the town and all that sort of stuff. It's 100,000 people.
Parade and everything.
We had
even celebrating driver salaries. It sounds wank, but a lot of people I know that manage elite player salaries and things because it puts them on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're not saying like, oh, they make more than you or anything like, but the top guys are making good money and that should be comparable to other sports where people look at drivers. I get asked like, oh, you know, do drivers get paid to race or is it like a full-time thing? And you know, some of the guys are making as much as like a top Collingwood player or some of the best NRL players. And kids should see that and like it puts them on a pedestal not to be a wanker, but to say, you know, it's a credible sport with great
celebrate
athletes.
it. That's the sort of stuff that should be. That's the sort of stuff that should get clicks on mainstream media outlets, as opposed to, and you know, we get easily distracted by the people who are in our backyard. So the speed cafes, the V8 sleuths of this world. But we need more mainstream coverage as well.
Yeah.
We need that. But the interesting thing is too, like you look at Bathurst. Bathurst, the peak audience for Bathurst this year was 5.4 million people.
Yeah. So that last night, unbelievable.
It ain't nothing.
No, that's right.
What about, just quickly, because we've got say 5 minutes or something, but I wanted to, obviously there's a lot to go into with when Penske left and everything.
What's the number on these cans? 4%.
4%.
Okay.
No, they only
You'll be right, mate. But I'd love to get into, we can do another chat again if providing you've enjoyed this one, you don't dislike us too much after this, but it's been a tough couple of years, especially after Penske left. They pumped and dumped pretty fast. But what's the plan now, focusing on next year? What are your immediate focuses to get your performance where it needs to be? You got a driver change, obviously. You've decided to keep Davo on 2 years. Quickly, like, what's the thinking behind that? Because Anton and Davo are very close. But then immediately next year, What are you focused on other than this unfair advantage with a chassis you've got coming? No, I'm kidding.
No, look, it's
What's the low-hanging fruit you see next year that DJR fans can get behind and have some real optimism going in there next year?
Look, there's plenty of low-hanging fruit, but part of it is you have to be reflective on where you are. And we've made some really difficult decisions, particularly around people that are hard just because of what we've been through together and the success we've had in the past. But we absolutely back the recruitments that we've made, and the investment we've made into 2025 is massive, massive. I mean, the investment we've made into this year, we bought an engine business, for Christ's sake. We didn't want to buy an engine business, but we bought it because we had to, and because we believe we could do the best job with it.
Yeah.
But a big part of it is you have to be reflective, and you have to have the balls to say, this is the bit we're fucking up.
Yeah.
You have to be prepared to say, this is where we need to do better, and you have to look at it critically. You can't be afraid of making really difficult decisions. So we also have to be realistic about how long it will take for us to rebuild. Just because you have a new driver coming on board and you've got some new race engineers coming on board, that doesn't mean you're instantly on the pace. You have to earn that.
Yeah.
So a big part of it is you get the main jigsaw pieces in place, and we're doing that with the people and with the infrastructure and with the investment. And some of the kit we've bought, we've not shied away from putting our money where our mouth is to have the best that we can possibly have, and to give our people what they believe they need. I mean, you would remember this too. One of the things that I always try and do at the end of the season, particularly with drivers, is say, what do you need to win? If they tell me I'm good, I expect them to win.
Yeah.
They need to be able to say, I need this, I need this, I need this. And talking to the drivers, and even talking to Will and Anton last year, I mean, their feedback was, we need some fresh blood, we need some new ideas, we need to think outside the box, we can't be so reliant on our tools. Pretty clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, the decision around Will and Anton, that was not an easy decision. And I won't get into the nitty gritty of it, but the thing that the take, and look, I've had a couple of decent social battles with members of Anton's family.
Yeah.
But the key thing is, look, he won a lot of races for us. So the last couple of years we did in the Gen 2 car, we were still pretty competitive. SVG was on another planet, but we were second in the team's championship. We should have won more races. We certainly had the equipment and the budget and the wherewithal to do it.
Yeah.
We didn't execute. And I'm partly responsible for that because I wasn't around. But for me, making those decisions, you have to also be grateful for what people have given you, which is what we are for Anton. Anton won, I don't know how many races, but I think he's the fourth winningest driver for us, I think, behind DJ, JB and Scott. He's fourth we've been around 45 years, fourth on the all-time winners list for DJR. So it's not insignificant. No. But making that decision's hard. So I'm not going to say anything negative about the bloke. He's got to drive. He's excited about where he's going. And that's what I think we need to celebrate here. Good blokes have got seats. They're happy with where they're going. We'd probably run our course together.
Yep. That's fair. Well, the pressure's on though, because Elliot's picked you as a race winner in round one.
Yeah. I'm backing you guys in.
Round one.
He has. I think I was round three.
You were
round three. Shane
said
AGP.
Shane's at AGP.
Okay.
For Brody, I said round one for any of your cars.
No pressure
I'm
on that.
I'm not picking whether it
When's
be
your first
Brody
win,
or Davo.
Ryan? We've got to ask you.
I think both drivers will win. I haven't really given thought as to when that'll happen.
Well, you need to give us an answer, mate.
Yeah, it's going to be an answer, mate. Go.
You can be wrong. It's fine.
I don't know. I like round three over round one. I'll tell you that
There we
much.
go. Round three.
Yeah.
You're going to win. And if you don't, you owe me an Xbox bonnet.
Okay.
I said race win in round one or a pole.
Yeah, I think we'll qualify all right. We can put
Sydney's
fast
strong for you guys too. Yeah.
We can put fast cars together for one lap. Yeah, for sure. So that could be on. But the other, so there's two sides of it. You have to make the investment, but you have to have the patience to let it pan out
a bit, yeah.
and know that you put a plan in place. And though there might be some teething issues while you get to the hallowed bloody ground.
Yeah.
But you got to put the right people in place and give them the wherewithal to deliver. Because the worst thing you can do is go and invest a shitload of money with drivers and engineers, and then when they ask you for the next widget, go, oh no, well we can't because we've just spent all this money on all this stuff. So we continue to invest in infrastructure, in R&D, and in giving the people what they tell us they need to win.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like
with that you can't then apply the thumbs. You can't put the thumb on the scales and demand results straight away.
Yeah.
You have to give it. There has to be accountability, but you also have to have some patience.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like you're giving them the tools that they've wanted, right? They're getting the new chassis, the new hot chassis, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Brody gets George and Tom's coming along too.
And I'm sure, no disrespect if there's new people coming on we don't know about yet, but
Yeah.
I'm sure you're building a team. But honestly, thank you for coming on. I really hope you've opened up. I hope other team owners see this and you've had the balls to come on here today and sit down and talk with us. And hopefully next year, I'd love to do like a mid-year catch-up or something and see how it's tracking.
After round 1, we'll see if you've got the trophy.
And after round 3, we'll see if you owe me a bonnet.
Let's wait to after round 3 and see, because I'll bring the bonnet with me.
Maybe I'll do a watch deal. If you guys get a win in round 1, I'll get a watch. How's that sound? I've got a Garmin at
That's
the moment.
expensive these
That's not,
days.
that is expensive these days, but yeah, well, I'm sure we can do a bit better than that. I'll just pull something out of the collection like I did for him.
Yeah. No, thank you though. And I do hope that, if people listening here, like we might get some other team owners come in because it's been a good transparent chat. I think people deserve to hear a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes, some of the stories. And there's still plenty more stories we'd love to get to, but that is it for what we'll call, like, maybe we'll call this one like part 1 for what comes in the future, Ryan.
Well, look, I really respect what you blokes do because you're delivering a product to the punters.
No, thank you.
And I really respect it. So
Two mates talking shit over a beer.
And props to you, mate, for actually coming having a drink with us, because we've had other owners and they didn't want to drink. They were a bit
Well, RD was on a cup of tea, but it was.
Yeah, so you won up on RD in my book so far. So RD, next one we do with you, mate, you need to live.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, gents. That was awesome. I'm going to get in so much shit.